Hi there, and welcome to the 16th episode of Career Stories Live. So I'm really pleased to have Melanie Seymour here joining me. So welcome, Melanie. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so lovely to be chatting.
It is. I can see we've got a comment already. So Jeff has popped in to say good afternoon. So thank you, as always, Jeff, for joining. Anybody else who is watching, please do comment and let us know that you're here, where you're joining from, and feel free to ask any questions or share your experience in the comments as we go. So Mel and I worked together in the 90s. We're really young.
There was no child labour laws then. It was fine.
I know. So long ago. I can't believe it was so long ago. But I think Mel was one of the first contract business analysts that I'd ever met. And there was this real role model that she was this professional that had come in to do this job. And it was really exciting. But she actually worked with Paul, not me, my husband. But yeah, we've obviously stayed in touch. So the basis for these lives that I'm talking about, I've always just been really interested in what people do and why they do it. So the idea really is to just give people information about different roles and career paths. So there's so much to talk about with Mel. So working in financial services, she set up an office in Budapest, board advisor to the Women in Banking and Finance Board, and really passionate about young people getting into work. So if we just start with what you do now, Mel, so could you just give us a bit of an overview about what it is you do at BlackRock?
I can. So, as I said, thank you so much for having me. So I've been at BlackRock for around about 13 years now and done 4 very different jobs. And before that, I had my own business. So it was always very weird. As Sarah said, I'd had multiple businesses, and to go back into corporate life was quite strange. But for the last 4 years, I've run client experience, which basically is everything post-sale. So my teams bring in the new clients onto the platform, bring the money across, transition the monies across, and then manage those clients all the way through their life.
Right.
So it's a team of about 1,000 across 27 different countries. So it truly is global.
Yeah.
And a huge change agenda to it. So when I took this role, I created a program called CX 2024. And 2024 was just a random date in the future. I had no idea what I'd really hit in 24.
Yeah.
Bizarrely, we're really close to being that will be a point where we've achieved. I mean, it's one of those things. I don't think you ever fix client experience because clients are always evolving, but we will definitely be at a great milestone by 24. So it's been incredible experience and good to see that move forward.
That's amazing. We've got a couple of comments. So Fernando is saying, have a good evening from the Philippines. So thank you for joining, Fernando. And Jeff saying, isn't BlackRock based in New York, USA? Is that right?
No, well, the head office is, but we have offices all over the world. So I think we have 52 offices now globally.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you manage 1,000 people. That's mad.
I know.
Not in a bad way, because you're an amazing leader, but yeah, just seems like the responsibility of that number of people.
Yeah, and especially through COVID. I mean, it was really interesting being a leader of that many people.
Yeah.
And I think you had to engage with people on a whole new level.
Yeah.
Because you really had to understand on a daily basis what was going on in people's lives. And like every day there was somebody had something that was happening that would impact them. So I think as leaders during that period, it really tested your leadership muscles.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, we've got a couple more comments now. Okay, so Fernanda's saying thanks for coming up. Okay, and Jeff is saying that truly is global. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so starting early in your career, when you look through your LinkedIn profile and obviously knowing you as well, there's a big pattern there of you working with change or managing change. So how did you first get into that area and realize it was something you wanted to continue with?
So I think it's because, and this is definitely a theme that's gone through my whole career, I can't help but sticking my nose in probably where it's not wanted. So the first job I had was valuing bonds in a bond house when there was no such thing as a computer. So we had pen, paper, calculator, and we wrote our own formulas. And I was always the person that would be as we were doing this, going, but why are we doing it this way? We could do this, and there's a better way of doing this. So we then were one of the first companies that started to implement technology.
Right.
This is sort of end of the 80s, sort of end 80s. And I was asked to go and be part of that team to implement the technology into our company.
Right.
And so I never really felt at that point that this is my career is going to be all about change and technology.
Yeah.
But going into that first program where it was, this is about how you utilize technology to really enable and change process, was just so exciting.
Yeah.
And I now say, and everyone who works with me agrees with this, you must never ever give me a BAU job, because I will break it so I can fix it.
Excellent.
So like all the time I'm thinking about how could you do this better? What
Yeah.
more could we do? How could we do
Yeah.
this differently?
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think it's something that's definitely always been part of my makeup from very
Yeah.
young. I've always challenged things. And I
Yeah.
think that's why my whole career has been around change in whatever format that's taken.
Yeah. And I know when we met, you were contracting doing a user accepted testing role, weren't you? And I think
Yeah.
even then you weren't just testing the new processes, you were like, well, this process is rubbish.
Yeah, I can't help myself.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeff's now saying it really is amazing to use tech to enable humans to do their job, very rewarding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
seeing people and technology working together is
Yeah.
what I love, because I still, like, especially in that sort of client experience world, and especially in an institutional world, I think we're a long way off technology completely replacing humans. Like,
Yeah.
people will still want that human touch, but I see
Yeah.
technology being such an enabler of making the best of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
rather than, it's not one or the other, it's how do the two really work together.
Yeah. I know we didn't talk about this, but Chat GPT and AI, have you started to use that
Yeah,
kind of thing? And is it scary? Is it?
it's both interesting and scary. And
Yeah.
I've got two boys, as you know, Sarah, that are 25 and 23, and both are sort of in more of that technology space. And so I have to keep up to be able to have valid conversations and not feel like I'm an ancient idiot.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, some of it, there's an element of scared, but I think it's how do you harness that for good, and how do
Yeah.
you make sure you're utilizing this in the right way?
Yeah, that's good. So I hadn't used it at all, and I'm randomly doing English A-level literature at the moment.
As you do.
As you do. And the question on the essay that I've got to write was something about what Shakespeare's view on marriage based on the Othello story. So I put that into ChatGPT just to see what it came up with, and actually it's really good. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you can see
Yeah,
how
I'll use that.
teachers need to be quite scared, because how are they going to? I know there's the whole, it's not always that personal the way it's written, but it does give you quite a good
Yeah.
research base. Okay, that's another comment. Okay, so Jeff again. So Jeff really, really loves technology, as you can see. So he's always found people, process, and technology working together could accomplish anything. Very true.
Yeah.
And again, that's the whole reason why I like all this LinkedIn stuff that people say to me all the time, because you can just use it to help you develop your career. I think it's such a great tool. Okay, and Alison. So Alison's one of my colleagues. She's saying great advice. So thank you. Okay, so then if we talk about your office that you set up, so BlackRock Budapest. So, and then in your profile, you said that the view was that it was going to be an innovation hub. So you can just talk a little bit about what that involved, how it all came about, etc.
So this again was definitely me sticking my nose in where it wasn't wanted. So when I first went to BlackRock, I ran a UK DC pensions business that we'd acquired as part of the Malim acquisition. And I ran that for a number of years and then sold it, and it became the first business we'd ever sold. And whilst we were going through that process, we were also looking at our location strategy globally. And I was really interested in that. So sort of went to the person that was running and said, hey, I'd like to be involved in this. So got myself integrated into the team, which eventually led to me being asked if I would be the person that went out there and set the office up.
Right.
And I'd only been to Hungary 3 times on due diligence visits, so I had no idea what it was like to work in Hungary. My remit was go and build something big, fast, and different. I had
Okay.
no idea how you did that.
But you said, yeah,
So
yeah, of course.
yeah, why not? I'm
Yeah.
sure I can do that. I had nowhere to live. We had no office. So I turned up on the 7th of January 2017 with a laptop.
Right.
And every day I would wake up and sit in the hotel foyer and go, oh, I wonder what you do on day 2 of setting up an office in Budapest. And over time, I sort of worked through what that would be and how it would come together. But it was, I mean, a huge responsibility it was the first ever office we'd set up from scratch, because every other
Right.
office has come either through some sort of acquisition or was
Yeah.
part of the core. And also that just the learning that, like, we always talk about at BlackRock, being a student, continuously learning, continuously being a student. And
Yeah.
as you said, part of my always wanted to be in change is I never want to know everything. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I
Yeah.
always want to be pushing myself and being challenged. And this was just something completely new.
Mm.
And what I, I realized quite quickly was we had to stand out. So we had to do something that was different. So we couldn't just go and be another shared service center type office. Like,
Mm.
how do we position ourselves differently? Which is where the idea of an innovation hub came. And it was like, let's bring some different types of roles there originally, rather than start with sort of, which is where a lot of these sort of nearshoring type offices start, is let's take the real simple process, let's get them running. When they're running, we might add some complexity. Whereas we went the other way and went, right, let's put our hardcore technology there. Let's put some of our advisory teams there. So straight away, it felt different in the market, which helped
Yeah.
us to attract different people.
Wow, amazing. So how did you go about recruiting people and things like that?
So one of the things that was, like, firstly, nobody knew who BlackRock was, and no one really
Okay.
understood asset management. So you didn't
Yeah.
go with, hey, we've got this great brand and
Mm.
everyone wants to work in an asset manager. Um, and in most markets, there's sort of you've got a competitor or an equivalent that you can go, yeah, it's people in that type of area that we'd be
Yeah.
interested in. But there was none of that there.
Yeah.
So we started off, we sort of went out and had job specs that were the normal job specs we would use, but we were getting very few
Mm.
candidates coming in, and we were really confused, because it was like, I thought this market
So
was
you
good
knew.
and we're getting
Yeah.
nobody. Like, yeah, big mistake here. But what we realized was, and again, it's that great interesting thing you learn about cultures when you actually work and live abroad, was Hungarian culture is quite literal. So if
Right.
you'd written something like 5 years financial services experience,
Yeah.
people wouldn't apply to go, I've only got 4.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's sort of a guide. It's
Yeah.
whereas,
Yeah.
in London, New
Yeah.
York, it'd be, yeah, I can spell financial services. Of
So
course,
that's
I've got
it.
5
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So we actually completely changed the way we wrote job specs, how we recruited, and we started talking about behaviors
Okay.
and soft skills. So the
Yeah.
type of people,
Yeah.
because, and sort of use this mantra of, if you get people with the right mindset, the right behaviors, and a desire and ability to learn, they
Yeah.
can learn most things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they haven't got that right mindset and behaviors, that's really hard to teach. So we actually brought people, and at one point we only had 25% of the workforce had financial services backgrounds.
Right. Okay.
So we were bringing real diversity of thought into the office, which was great.
That's amazing. And there is a big push, particularly on LinkedIn at the moment, about this whole skills first recruiting. So not necessarily looking at qualifications or anything like that, but actually, like you say, the skills are the
Yeah,
things that are hard to teach, aren't they? Whereas
yeah.
the knowledge is easy for people to learn relatively.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so it was good. So and it meant that we built a very diverse workforce from day
Yeah,
one, which
yeah,
was what we always wanted.
that's cool. And what's the do people kind of stay around, or do they move around quite a lot in Hungary?
No, I mean, we've now got nearly 1,000 people in the office,
Right.
and retention rates are really good. And I
Yeah,
think one of the other things that we try to do a lot of globally is a lot of internal mobility,
yeah,
so that we spend a lot of time actually having real career conversations with people.
yeah.
And because we have such a diversity of roles, from technology to investments to
Mm,
sales to operations,
yeah,
most people should be able to find something they want
yeah.
within the organization, as long as you're
Mm,
having those proper career conversations with them.
that's
So
amazing.
we
Yeah,
do a lot of, and we've actually got Careers Month in April, where it's making sure managers are really understanding the aspirations of everybody. What do they
yeah,
want? How can we help them get there? How do we utilize what they know and their skills to move them into where they want to go?
yeah. That's really good. So I know when I talk to quite a lot of my clients, they'll say to me things like, "Oh, I can't update my LinkedIn because then my manager will know that I'm leaving." And I'm like, "No, no,
No.
no." And if they do, then maybe you're in the wrong company if you're worried that they're gonna, sack you or something because
Yeah.
you've added new skill to your LinkedIn profile. It's just madness. So it's really
Yeah.
good to hear big organizations like yours are having those really good career conversations.
Yeah. Because I think it's so important, and also that people feel that they should be having those conversations with their
Yeah,
manager.
yeah,
That one of the things we always say is it's your career, and it's up, like, managers aren't mind readers.
yeah, yeah,
So the amount of managers and people that you speak to and become like surprised because somebody wanted to be a technologist and they wasn't at the moment. But did you
yeah,
never have that conversation, either of you?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think the more that you can start to think about how you have those conversations, and if you're a manager, how you make
yeah,
that just part of your normal one-to-one type
yeah,
catch ups.
exactly. And you're obviously far more likely to keep those people in the company, aren't
Totally.
you, as well? So,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, it's a no-brainer, really. Okay, so Jeff's now saying as well, he agrees, and if he's the smartest person in the room, he's in the wrong room. So
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay, so I think we could talk about Budapest for ages. It's really interesting, but move on to a lot of your other work now. So, as alongside of you being, like a leader at BlackRock, you've also got lots of other things that you do on the side. So, the advisory board member for Women in Banking and Finance. So you've been there for 10 years. So,
Yeah. Probably
what
a bit
does
more
that
now.
organisation do? More than that, okay. And
Yeah.
what's your role, and what do they do? And
But I think it was really interesting. So, as I said, I'd had my own business before coming back into corporate life, and we'd always had quite a diverse workforce. And so
yeah,
I felt it was quite normal.
yeah,
Then I come back into corporate life, and it was like, oh, actually, this isn't as diverse as I expected it to be.
right,
And so I wanted then to really get more involved in how
yeah,
do I start to look at this space and how do I get more involved.
yeah,
So I joined Women in Banking and Finance because there's lots of organisations out there. But one of the things that really drew me to Women in Banking and Finance was they'd been around for a really long time. So
yeah,
they'd been around for about 30 years. They
okay,
were started by two women in banking that were probably the only two women in banking at that point.
wow,
And it was like, we need to try and find other people like us, but also help people coming up, or women coming up,
yeah,
to
yeah,
do that. And that's really been what their mission has been for all that time, is
yeah,
how do they provide a platform to help women in sort of a whole range of banking and finance roles to grow and develop and overcome some of the barriers they've felt, learn from others. We have sort of multiple strands of whether it is sort of learning and development, or we have big great sort of partner organizations in the industry that do a lot in terms of recruitment, and we have a job board. but mainly it's just having a great sort of community of women at all different levels that feel that they've got that group that they can pull on at
Yeah.
different points in their career.
Yeah.
So it's not just this, oh, at this point you're going to need this. I think everyone, whatever stage they are at their career, needs some people around them that they can use as really good role models, sounding boards.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. So I've got a question from Alison, and I think this is going back to the kind of the career conversation. So she's saying, do you link that to succession plans?
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
it's one of the things, like for my team, we have sort of 3 leadership offsites a year, and in the sort of first one of the year, which is normally January, February, we look forward and we look at where do we think the organization's going to go in 12 months, because as I
Yeah.
said, I never am in a function where it's not going to change in 12 months.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we look at what we think that's going to look like and what we're going to need, and then look at the talent we have and look to say, like, have we got the right people for the right role in 12 months time?
Yeah.
And if not, should they go somewhere different?
Right.
And who are the people that could fill those gaps for those people?
Yeah.
And last year, in my sort of team of 1,000, we moved 26 managing directors and directors into new roles.
Wow.
And most of those weren't chomping at the bit saying, I need something more, I need something more. But
Yeah.
through the conversations that had been had over the couple of years, it was actually, this is a direction that they are looking to go in. So let's put
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you, Alison, for asking that question. So Lee's asked a question, which is about LinkedIn. So Lee has a recruitment company. So he's saying, adding skills to your profile, people are right to be wary because LinkedIn specifically lists people who have changed their profile as movers or potential movers to talent acquisition team who pay for the talent pool products. And as a result, you can understand the employee being wary. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I think what actually happens with the LinkedIn recruiter tool is, so say BlackRock have a recruiter license, which they probably do. If they run a search, they can't actually see anyone in BlackRock on their results, because LinkedIn puts measures in place that if you've got that email format or if you work for that organization, they can't actually see it. So I think that should be covered, Lee, but yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And Jeff is saying it's true that adding changing skills does help you get found, but that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with being on the job hunt. So yeah, that's true. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so see the time's flying. So young people. So I know we've talked about young people and work for a long time, and I remember actually, I think it was Elliot, your son, who was really interested in coffee beans, wasn't he? About grinding coffee, and he gave my kids like this barista masterclass. So they still talk about that now. But, yeah, so we've talked a lot about kids and careers for a long time, but so what is it that you're so passionate about with young people starting out in work, and what are you working on for that at the moment?
So I think it sort of goes back to my background, and I'm sort of that deeper passion about diversity as a whole.
Yeah.
And one of the areas that I'm sort of really driving at the moment is socioeconomic backgrounds, and really looking at how do we help different young people get into different types of roles. And I think there's so much out there, and so many young people that don't have the network around them to help guide them,
Yeah.
because either their parents are not in that space, or they just don't have a schooling system or a peer group that would direct them in any way that would be
Yeah.
different to either what their parents have done or what their friends have done.
Yeah.
And I saw it with my kids. I made a very conscious decision that I wanted my children to go to state school so that they met a whole diverse mix
Yeah.
of kids. And you saw some really, really, really smart kids that just didn't have anyone around them to help guide them, and made some decisions that weren't, I mean, not necessarily right or wrong, but not necessarily with all the guidance they had or all the information that was out there.
Yeah.
And so therefore I became very passionate when my boys were sort of thinking about roles of, I really need to help more people with this. So
Yeah.
like, there's so many like young kids, sort of 17, 18, that reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I always will have a conversation with them,
Yeah.
give them some advice, help them, because I just think that's our future. Like, and again,
Yeah.
it's like, if we don't start really investing in that next generation and giving them some of that help to think more broadly about what the options are, I just worry that so many young people get defined of what they can or can't be at such a young age,
Yeah.
that they don't open their minds to the art of the possible, because
Yeah.
nobody um, really helps them or gives them some of that. So I try as much as I can to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
And
And I
what,
think, yeah. Sorry, I
oh,
was going to say
sorry.
the thing as well is that those kids that are coming from the different backgrounds, they're probably going to have genius ideas about products of the future, and actually this product could help this group of people. So it's not even just about getting them into work, is it? It's about expanding your product range and things like that.
Exactly. So yeah, really passionate about that. And also, like, one of the things we're doing is we're just starting an apprenticeship program, is like, how do you look at different routes in for people? Like, not
Yeah.
everyone, university doesn't suit everyone.
No.
Um, and it shouldn't be the only way to get certain jobs is to have gone through that route. I think the more
Yeah.
that you can look at different ways and help. So that's one of the things I am very passionate about and try to do
Yeah.
as much as I can.
Yeah, I always remember one of our I won't name him, but one of our senior board members, he was like head of IT or something. He took massive pride in saying, I didn't even get any O levels, and but he was still in this massive position. But I think there's been a big reduction in people like that, hasn't there, because of the
Yeah,
whole you have to have a degree to get a job
yeah,
type thing. So it's
no,
really good to
exactly.
hear that it's changing. And I guess even A levels, not everyone can cope with A levels. So it's that even
No,
the 16-year-old group is, I think, a bit of a worry.
yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, thank you. So, so you've talked about what you're working on as well. So, I mentioned earlier we tend to always talk about values on this series. So, do you think your personal values have got an impact on your work? So it sounds like they do from everything you've said.
Yeah, no, totally. Because I think there's like those core things that I'm passionate about. I
Yeah,
need to be able to see that in
yeah,
work. And I think one of my core values is authenticity,
yeah,
and that I think to be a real true role model, you have to be authentic and you have to be real. I
yeah,
think there's so many people and so many organizations where that authentic leadership just isn't there.
yeah,
Um, so I think I'm very lucky I'm in an organization that's very purpose driven,
yeah,
um, and you can live whatever your purpose is on a daily basis because there's those opportunities. But
yeah,
yeah, I think I definitely, if I was ever going to move, the culture, the values of the organization would be so much more important to me than anything else.
yeah. No, that's good. And I think that's the thing. Authenticity gets talked about so much on LinkedIn, but actually being authentic and and just saying you are two very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think some of I have strong opinions on lots of the perceived role models around, especially from a female perspective,
Yeah,
that just aren't real. And I'm sure if I was in my 20s, you'd look at some of these people and go, I could never be that. I could never be that
yeah,
perfect. I could never
yeah,
do any of that.
yeah,
Because people reinvent themselves as they go through their career. And it's like, no, it was
yeah,
never that easy. It
yeah.
was never,
No,
nothing is ever that smooth. But you
no.
have to be honest about that and feel open and vulnerable to be able to talk about it.
Talk about things that don't work out. And
Yeah,
that's the thing, that's where you get your best learning, isn't it? Things that don't
yeah,
quite go as you expected.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. We are running short of time now. So what advice would you give to young people who are trying to get their first role either from school or university at the moment?
So one of the things I always say is probably that first 10 years of your career,
Mm,
don't sweat too much about where you start or what you do.
okay.
I talk about it as being this sort of metaphorical backpack of skills, experience, people, that the more variety you have, the more likely you are to be able to do a multitude of things as your career expands.
Right.
I think, especially if people have gone through a very structured school, university,
Yeah.
I think they can get so caught up in, I want to be this,
Yeah.
and that's the only thing that's going to make sense to them.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the other things that you could do by sort of taking the blinkers off and looking left and right
Yeah.
actually give you skills that you never know you would need
Yeah.
or aren't that important. So I think it's that don't worry too much about where you start. Don't
Yeah.
worry too much about what you do in those first years, as long as you're putting things in that backpack,
Yeah.
and think about it as filling that backpack up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's been really, really useful, this conversation. So hopefully everyone that's been watching has got some good tips out of it. So thank you again, Mel, for coming on, and thank you to everyone that's been watching. So if you do have any more comments, please do feel free to add them in, and I can go back in and answer them later on. So future shows, I've got people booked up till June now, and next week I'm back at 1 o'clock again talking to Niraj Kapoor, who is LinkedIn top voice keynote speaker, TEDx speaker, and sales trainer. So looking forward to chatting to him. So thank you again, Mel. It's been really great.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, and
Good.
hopefully see you again soon.
Yeah, and I've just had here a comment from Alison saying, clearly an authentic leader and a true model. Excellent advice. Great session. Thanks you very
Alison.
much. Yeah, it has been great. Thank you. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to put the placeholder on now and end the session. So see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.